right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. If you are new here, we are primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast. My name is Billy Dees, and we have an interview today. My guest is Kristy Mickelsen. Kristy, so glad to have you, as always.
Always a pleasure to be here, Bill. I can't wait to get into this.
Good. Now, Kristy has a lot of different things going on, I guess. She has her own podcast, and she's part of our production group here. It's the WWAA podcast. Is that how you say it?
Yes. I know a lot of people get confused with it.
I know you don't say all the letters. So, yeah. We're very excited to have her, but we're not talking about that today. We're going to talk about her new book. And her book is titled Sweet Inspiration. And it's kind of like a short read. I guess that's a category, a short read memoir. And you're talking about your youth and all these other things. Before we get into all that, some of the people that are fans of yours probably know me and the other way around. But you never know when somebody's kind of new, listening for the first time. So let's talk just a little bit about you. Now, you are an advocate for many things, including lupus, cancer, so on. Tell us a little bit about your advocacy and what you do online.
All right. Thank you, Bill. Like Bill said, I'm an advocate for causes such as cancer, autism, lupus awareness, and suicide awareness and prevention, along with many other different causes that are close to my heart. And pretty much what I do is I help people find a voice for themselves, number one. I use my podcast to help them tell their stories and their struggles with topics such as lupus and cancer and suicide, prevention and awareness. But also online, I do what's called positive content creator modeling, I guess you can say, where I do different pictures of myself in different situations and I add positive quotes. And that's really, I don't even know the right word, but people have really gotten into that and they've really enjoyed it. So I've had a lot of fun doing that. I also put together fundraisers and events to help raise money for different causes such as suicide awareness and prevention, lupus. We're going to be doing some fundraisers for autism next year in July. So we have a lot that's going on and a lot that I actually do. And we teach spaces on some of these things, letting people tell their stories and their struggles and what has helped them.
When you talk about spaces, a lot of people aren't going to know what those are. Okay. And you don't necessarily need to be a social media, enthusiast to appreciate these. I kind of like the idea of them. Spaces are kind of what the name implies. They're little get-togethers online. They're audio only, and they happen on X, which is the former Twitter. And this was something that started when Twitter was still Twitter. Now it's X. Spaces has really taken off because Elon Musk and some other really big newsmakers have used them not only to talk about the news, but to create news. A lot of people have made announcements as far as what they're doing, or running for office or whatever in these spaces. So they're becoming a recognized form of communication. And that's what you're talking about, right? That's what these spaces are.
Absolutely. I like to tell people it's like a big chat room where all these people could come in and you get to talk about different topics. And it's like you're talking to a room full of people. It's almost like a Zoom call without the video. So it's very informative and very helpful to a lot of people on X. I'm very glad that they're still around, actually.
Yeah. It's just like anything else. You're going to find a lot of spaces, just like you're going to find blogs or podcasts or anything else that, aren't worth, the time of day. But there's some that are absolutely fantastic. And they bring in all kinds of information and bring people together that have a common cause, whether it be chronic illness or mental health, any of these types of issues. So that's all a great thing. Talking about your story and your memoir, let's go a little bit there. What made you decide, because you're still relatively young. Of course, a lot of people now, they're 25 years old and they're writing a memoir, which I never quite understand. I was born, but you're still relatively young to be writing a memoir, in my opinion. I could be totally off base on this, and that's fine. But What made you decide to write a memoir?
Well, that's a great question, Bill. And actually, the idea came from a couple of my fans. They're all, we want to know how you went from being a preschool teacher over to being a full-time author, a podcaster, a brand ambassador for, all the things that I do. They were like, how did you go from this to that? And I was like, it's so much I could write a book on it. And they're all, then do it, make a memoir for it. And so I was like, I asked everybody on Facebook and on Twitter, I did a poll. And I said, if I wrote a memoir, who's actually wanting to read this? And I had an overwhelming response on both Facebook and Twitter about, yeah, do it. We think it would be interesting. So I went ahead and did it. And the book contains a lot of personal memories for me growing up. And it deals with some of the depression I had growing up and some of the depression I had when I lost some family members and some loved ones. And it goes into detail. I don't know how much detail you'd like me to talk about with it, but it goes into some detail on some things. And then as I was reading back, I realized I actually left out quite a bit of things. So there might be a part 2 to this book coming soon. They always tell you don't give your audience everything at one shot. So maybe that's what I did.
Well, that's true of anything. There's an old saying in showbiz, always leave them wanting more. And a lot of artists forget that, especially at concerts. When you walk out of a concert and say, my God, I thought that thing would never end. It was too long and you're not going to go back. You always wish, I wish they'd have done this, or I wish they would have done that. That's a good thing. So a part 2 is probably a good way to handle it. What about your childhood? Without here again, we don't want to cover the book necessarily in detail here, but just to give the audience an idea, what was it about your childhood that had these kinds of impacts on you?
Great question, Bill. Let's see. Growing up, I was in an average family. There's me, my mom and dad, my brother. We grew up and we didn't have a lot of money. And quite frankly, I didn't have a lot of friends growing up. I was kind of the nerdy tomboy girl. Everything. One minute I'm playing with Barbie dolls, and the next minute I'm reading Sweet Valley Twin books, and the next minute I'm in the backyard playing in the mud with Tonka trucks. And I was actually also, while other girls were out, I don't know, playing dress up, I was playing in the den at my grandfather's house, having my own talent agency to, so famous actors such as Tom Cruise and Val Kilmer, and they were my clients, and I would write up fake little contracts. And I was kind of the nerd. Let's put it that way. Nobody really wanted to play with me back then. I was kind of in my own little world. And so that gave me some depression. But growing up, I also struggled a lot with my weight. And when you're growing up in the 80s, I was born in 1978. Growing up in the 80s, you have a lot of teen rebellion. You have people looking at your looks. You have another form of people that everything's about success. The other people are all about looks. The other people are like, we're into rebellion, And I wasn't any of those things. I didn't have the looks. I didn't have the thin look that most people were going for back then, but some of my friends did. And so I would always feel left out, and I always felt depressed, and nobody quite understood that. And I didn't have the cool clothes like my friends had. My family couldn't afford it. In fact, we were broke so badly at one point that my glasses had broke and we couldn't afford to go get them fixed. And the only thing my dad could think of is he put a straw on the end of it to keep my glasses up. And that caused me to be teased in school. There was so much there that gave me an early start to depression when I was younger. And then it just goes on when I was a teen into how I couldn't lose the weight, how, people make fun of you. I couldn't date for a long time. My dad was pretty strict. And when my friends were dating, I was trying to figure out how I was going to fit into the world. So I was kind of a bad girl in high school. And I was out stealing cars. I was out doing I was doing things that people would not think that I would do. And then my life changed when I started meeting a guy, which I get into the book too. So there's a lot there. I don't know how far you want me to go, Bill.
Okay. There's always a guy. There's always one of those. Yeah. That's
always the guy.
Always the guy. Now, this is your latest book. You've written a couple of them. Just so the audience knows, tell us a little bit about the history of your book writing. And it's typically like romance, right?
For the most part, it is romance. I do have one other nonfiction book, which is 9 Months to Autism, and that was my rookie book. Had no idea what I was doing, but I wanted to prove a point to my children that you can accomplish anything that you set your mind to. So I wrote my first short book, which is 9 Months to Autism. And then after that, I wrote a book called Lady for Hire, which to this day, everyone still loves that book. That's the favorite. And then after that, I wrote A Christmas to Remember, which is half fiction, half nonfiction. The emotions in that book were very real based on my mom's feelings when my dad passed away from cancer. And then this new book, Sweet Inspiration, is all about my life and my story and the guys that I dated and the drug use that I did in the days and my depression, and then how I got to where I am now, because people are constantly asking me, how did you go from a preschool teacher to a full-time author, advocate, and all the things that you do? So I'm very proud of the book. Even though I've missed some things, like I said, that I didn't put in. Like I said, maybe there's a part 2 in there somewhere.
Well, good for you. Let's talk a little bit about your advocacy, because I think that's one of the things that makes you very real. I know. Let's start with autism, and I that for some reason, don't ask me how, but like so many other things now, you can't mention anything without it becoming a political football. I don't care what it is. The sky's blue. Well, no, there's blah, blah, blah. Tell us a little bit about what you would want people to know about autism. What's the bottom line? Because I hear so many things, and I know a lot of people have drawn connections to different types of food and the preservatives, which I can't believe is a good thing for anybody. What is your feeling about autism when you hear it tossed around so much? What do you want to jump in and say? Hey, wait a minute. And what would you want to say?
That's a great question too. I think for me, what I would like to say as a parent of 2 people with autism is too many people feel that autism is an illness or that people are crazy. That is simply not true. Autism is a cognitive disability, usually caused by genetics, or in my kids' case, there's a different wiring in their brain. And it doesn't mean they're crazy. It means they think, for the most part, in pictures. I could sit here and talk with you, Bill, and we could understand each other. But if you're talking to my daughter, she's going to picture, if you're talking to her, say, about a jar of honey, she's going to picture a jar of honey. She's not going to understand the word, a jar of honey. She's got to like run things in her mind like a movie. And that's the main difference. They are not different. They are not unusual. They are not crazy. And it is not an illness that is out there that is catchable. You don't catch autism. You cannot catch autism. If you go back through research for many, 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 many years, which autism's been around since I believe the early 1800s. I mean, you cannot catch autism. It is not an illness. It is a cognitive disability, usually caused by different wiring in the brain due to mutated genes. Could be environmental. People don't know that yet. There's still a lot of studies on that. But that's what I would tell people, because there's so many misconceptions about what autism is. Or, oh my God, that person has autism. This is the hugest pandemic ever. We've been people like me who are advocates and mothers, we've been fighting this for so long, trying to tell people our kids are not ill. When you say the word pandemic, people think of, oh my God, that's an illness. This illness is going to explode. It's not an illness. It is simply a rewiring of the brain. And like for my son, when he was born where he couldn't breathe. But during the time that I was in labor, the machines at the hospital weren't picking up the contractions. They thought I had some type of infection, and they kept pushing Demerol through my system. But my son was also born premature. And in my family, my grandparents were cousins, and they didn't know it. They were first cousins. So they felt, the doctors, the specialists felt that since my grandparents were cousins, my dad had mutated genes, which caused some issues. His brothers all had mutated genes. And then, of course, you got me, and my children have mutated genes, which they believe caused my son's autism, along with the pushing of Demerol through my system, which got to my son. And when my daughter was born, she was born with the umbilical cord wrapped around her neck causing lack of oxygen to the brain, which when the babies are born, they don't have a fully developed brain. So there's all kinds of different things there, but I just want people to know that autism's not an illness. And these people are real people. They are not crazy. They are not a political agenda. They're real people. And more autistics are losing their lives because of bullying and all the things going on right now. It's so hard for me to explain, but that's something that really fires me up. Too many people with autism are losing their lives right now because of online bullying, because people have a misconception that they're crazy or ill.
Yeah.
And sorry about getting all fired up there, Billy.
No, that's fine. I think a lot of people in good faith, when they talk about an epidemic, I don't know that they necessarily mean like a flu epidemic. I think, back, I'm old enough to remember school in the 1970s. And I know that the diagnoses for autism was very rare. Now that is climbing all the time. And it seems like it's climbing every time they do a study. And I think a lot of people in very good faith just want to know why that's climbing. Now, I've heard some explanation as well. The diagnosis has widened. A lot of people get put in that autism category that maybe 20 years ago didn't go into that category. But on a more practical level, here again, I went to grade school in the 1970s, and I went to one school for 8 years because it was 1 through 8. And, hundreds, if not thousands of kids came through that school in that almost of a decade. And I can tell you that people with cognitive issues of one kind or another were very rare. I remember a few kids that did have them, but for the most part, regardless of how you're defining it, those kinds of issues were not as common as physical disabilities. I remember a few kids who had crutches and things like that, but not too many of them had cognitive disabilities. Now, when I talk to parents and when I go out into the community, it seems like significant percentages of the class population have some sort of an issue now. So I can't believe that this problem isn't growing. I can't believe that there isn't something that's causing it, whether it be diet or something else. And I'm not saying diet is necessarily tied into autism, but there's got to be something going on. Do you have an opinion or an observation about that?
Well, again, they are doing a lot of research right now, currently, on environmental factors, like what was the mother doing while she was pregnant, that kind of thing, to see if that could tie into autism. But I think the growing rate that we're actually seeing is partially, and I don't know, I'm not a doctor here, but partially, I think it's because people are starting to actually understand autism better, so they're recognizing signs faster. And an example of that is growing up, when my kids were growing up, the people in our neighborhood didn't know what autism was either until they met my son and daughter. And they're like, oh, and they pick up things and they started to remember, well, Cassie walks on her tiptoes, or, Josh has the behavior issues, or whatever the issue was. Well, one of my neighbors across the street, when her grandson was born, I think she started to see some things. So she's all, Cassie was doing that when she was growing up, or Josh was doing that. Maybe we should go get, little Tommy here, see if we can get a diagnosis. People are seeing things faster now based off of what they're learning from autism. And I think that's helping grow the diagnosis. But I think one of the other things that is causing an explosion of diagnosis is, and this is something I've witnessed, people are out there making TikTok videos and stuff like that, trying to give awareness of what autism is. And that's great. But then you have people off to the side watching these videos and they're all, maybe I stem. Oh, maybe I've walked on my tippy toes. Maybe I'm autistic. Oh, wow, I do that. Maybe I'm autistic. And so they go to the doctor and they say, I think I'm autistic. And doctors these days, and I've witnessed this, okay, you're autistic. And they write it off, and there you go. And that's all it takes to get diagnosed these days. Now, when my kids were growing up, you had to go through several observations and you had to go through several doctors. And, there were several things you had to do. But in today's society, more and more people are doing that self-diagnosis because there's actually tests online. There's the cars online. There's was it Cars 1, Cars 2? There's all different types of tests that you could do online. And if you score in a certain percentage, they say, go to the doctor and tell them you're autistic. And a lot of people are doing that. I think that's what's causing part of the rates to rise, because people think they're autistic, but it could be they're actually dealing with something else that's like a sister to autism. That's what I personally think.
All interesting stuff. And I'll just close out this particular part of the subject saying that anytime a disease starts to become, what's the word I'm looking for here, a business, and it becomes the thing, and the treatment becomes the thing, you have to be careful of that. So yes, absolutely. I certainly see all of those points of view for sure. Another part of your wheelhouse is the podcast itself. I know people don't necessarily like to listen to podcasts about podcasts, and I don't want to put them through that, but it is a big part of your wheelhouse. I know it's something you've taken a lot of pride in. Tell us a little bit about, because you've evolved. You started out with a certain wrestling element, and you've kind of gone back to where I think you kind of feel most comfortable, and that is, human stories, advocacy, things like that. You want to tell us a little bit about what people can expect when they find your podcast? And again, it's the WWAA podcast, and you can find it on just about any podcast platform. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Bill. Basically, when I first started the podcast, I was into wrestling. I'm a wrestling sponsor for our local wrestlers here in Texas. And my son was in wrestling, and so I wanted to do something with writing and wrestling together, because my co-host, Axel Savage at the time, him and I, we worked well as a team together, and we're very good friends, and we wanted to do something different. And so we started it, but all of a sudden, Axel's career got very busy, and my career just kind of went kaboom, and it exploded into all kinds of different things. I grew my career pretty fast, and then I was like, okay, I don't have a co-host. What can I talk about that I'm comfortable talking by myself with a guest? And so I went back to, I'm comfortable with struggles, personal struggles, because I think I can really relate to someone that's gone through a cancer scare, or someone that has lost someone to cancer, or in my case, people that have lost somebody to suicide. I've lost 6 people to suicide. So that's something that really touches my heart. And then I do a lot of research on the subject. I want to know what people want to listen to. So I would do little polls on Facebook. What kind of shows would you like me to cover? And I did some polls on Twitter, and a lot of people were like, stick to relationships, your autoimmune diseases, your personal struggles. But they also wanted to hear today's arts and entertainment industry. They wanted more about music and actors and stuff. So I kind of decided I wanted to do all of it. Why limit myself to one subject? So I wanted to do all of it, and I connected with a lot of people. I have some really good talent agent friends who are constantly sending me their talent, their clients. And then every time I see someone with a personal story that really looks like it's something that I could connect with, I could contact them and ask them if they would like to tell their story on my show. And it's become a platform for people to tell their story. And they tease me a little bit about my slogan, be the voice, be the change, and be the one to make a difference. And a lot of people can relate to that. They love that. But at the same time, it's gotten to where it sometimes can be very, I guess the word would be pressuresome. It puts a lot of pressure, because some people take the slogan in the wrong aspect, and they expect me to fix their problems. I've had people come to me and say, you're the voice. Get me an autograph from these wrestlers. You can make it happen because you're the voice. Or I'm autistic. You're the voice. Make this happen. And that's not the purpose of the podcast. The podcast is for you to share your story and your struggles and how you came to victory. So you be the voice and you be the change and help others save a life. That's what the podcast slogan is.
Yeah, it's more of a man in the mirror type thing. Not, don't ask me what I can do for you. It's about what you could do for yourself and others around you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't let people will always take something you do into some reason you have to do something for them, and you nip that in the bud right away. That's That's probably one of the more unattractive things about my personality. I don't have any problem saying, nope, that isn't what I'm going to do for you. Um, and that's not to say I think I'm for the most part a pretty good, generous person. It's one
Yes, you
thing
are.
to well, thank you. It's one thing to be willing to help somebody. It's another thing to get strong armed into it. And that's don't. What's the old saying now? People are saying that don't take my kindness as a sign of weakness.
Weakness, yes.
Yeah, and if for somebody that's as visible as you are, whatever percentage you want to attach to it, 1%, 2%, 3%, those people are going to try to leverage something into what you can do for them. And most people won't, but there's going to be a percentage that will.
Trust me, there's been times where it's like, okay, I'm going to try to help this person, and then you realize you're not Superwoman yourself, and you can't help everybody out there. And so it was depressing at first, but now I realize I'm only human. I could only do what I can do, and if I can give you a platform to tell your story, I'm all for it. But I can't be the one to make everything perfect in your life. You have to take the steps, and you have to create your own path to success, and you have to create your own journey to get there. That's the only thing I can tell you. It's the best advice I can give people.
100% true. The book is called Sweet Inspiration, and you're using Kristy Mickelsen as the author name, correct?
Yes, all my books will always be under Kristy Mickelsen. And now I want to specify one thing for future listeners here. I used to use just romance books, but I've decided that I really like doing romance and nonfiction. So I'm going to explore a little bit with more nonfiction, and I'm going to continue writing romance because I like my books to have relatable characters. And you can really do that through both the romance world and the nonfiction world. And with Sweet Inspiration, I hope people will really pick it up, read it, and get to know it, because there's actually the very last chapter of the book is my personal letter to everybody. And pick up the book, everybody, and I hope you enjoy reading my journey from childhood up to now and getting to know Billy. There's actually a chapter about Billy Dees in there.
No, well, I hope I'm a good influence. Sometimes not so much.
Absolutely.
Oh, well, good. Thank you. Sweet Inspiration. Okay, it's available on Amazon, of course. Barnes and Nobles. Where else?
Barnes and Noble, Hoopla, Kobler, the Smashwords. It's everywhere. Just type in Sweet Inspiration by Kristy Mickelsen, and I'm sure you would find it on any platforms. Oh, and we just actually got picked up by Ripped Bodice in New York. So you can actually find some books online through them. And if you call them, then they would order it and put it in the store. But we have been picked up by Ripped Bodice, which is a famous one for romance books. I'm very happy about that.
Awesome. That is great. Now, where else can people find you? Now, obviously, you are online. The WAA podcast you can find on all the major podcast platforms. You are on Twitter as X now, at Kristy Books, right? Where else can people find you? Where else do you want them to let you know that you can be found?
Oh, wow. I'm pretty much everywhere, Bill. You could actually do a Google search and you'd find me there. But I am on TikTok as author Kristy Mickelsen, Facebook at Kristy Mickelsen. There's a couple different accounts for that, but please look for the verified account. That one is the one I use the most. There's Lemons 8. I don't remember the screen name for that. There is Comey. I'm on Kristy Mickelsen at Comey.io. There is my website, KristyMickelsen.com. I am pretty much everywhere, Bill. I try to keep myself out there and in front of people. So if you have a website, I'm sure I'm there somewhere.
Yes. Yeah. Otherwise, you're on the wrong internet, right? All right.
Absolutely.
So, okay. Kristy Mickelsen is who we have been talking to, author of the memoir. It's a short read. It's not something that, is going to, belabor you to get through. It's short, inspirational, and kind of gives you an idea of what she's all about. And what she's all about is being a good person. You can't teach people that. And I'm very glad to know you, Kristy. I think you've been a good influence on me, and I've needed it.
Oh, thanks, Bill. You've actually influenced me in a lot of ways. And I talk about that in a little bit in the book.
All right. Well, that's fantastic. I'm going to have to check that out as soon as possible. Kristy, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure, Bill. And ladies and gentlemen, be looking for Bill on my podcast. He comes onto my show and helps me co-host, and I can't do things I do without him. So thank you so much, Billy.
Thank you for saying that, and you're very welcome. You can find me on the former Twitter. We always have to say that. People still don't understand. It's X now, and at Billy D's. That's kind of like my social media home. I do have gotten into politics and news over the last year and a half, and that has been good because I enjoy it. First of all, I enjoy current events, and the listens are there. Do check us out. We do a lot of other things too on the podcast. You can find the Billy D's podcast on any major podcast platform. We have a 10-year history. We do shows very similar to this. We have advocates coming on all the time, interesting people. And of course, once a week, we also do the current events episode. So thank you very much for listening. Thanks to Kristy. Again, thank you very much.
Bill.
And we will talk to you again very, very soon.
Thank you for listening to the Billy D's podcast. Follow Billy D's on X at Billy D's for updates about the program.
Do you listen to music or audiobooks on streaming devices such as Sonos or Amazon speakers? How about on your car sound system? If you use Spotify, Audible, or Amazon Music on any of these systems, you can also listen to the Billy D's podcast the same way. Billy and his team go the extra mile to make sure our podcasts sound as good or better than anything on the radio. Listening to the Billy D's podcast has never been easier. You literally just have to ask.